trees are crowned with leaves, when the ocean took and the birds anew, and dressed in ribbons fair. When I was cold, the breathless moon in the blue veil of the night, the shadows of the trees appear amidst the lantern lights. We've been running all the night, and sometime of this day, love me turning back again. We breathe a garden gay. daylight is almost gone. The birds have sung their last. The bells call out to mass. Sit ye by my side, for the night is very long. There's something I must tell before I pass along. I joined the brotherhood. My books were all to me. I scribed the words of God and much of history. Many a year was I pushed out upon the sea. The waves would wash my tears, wind my memory. I'd hear the ocean breathe, exhaled upon the shore. I knew the tempest blood, its wrath I would endure. And so the years went by within my rocky cell, with only a mouse or a bird, my friend, I loved them well. And so it came to pass, I'd come here to Romany. Many a year it took till I arrived here with thee. On dusty roads I walked, and over mountains high, through rivers running deep, beneath the endless sky. Beneath these jasmine flowers, amidst these cypress trees, I give you now my books and all the mysteries. I take the hourglass and turn it on his head, and when the suns are still, just then you find the beaded barley, hear a song that echoes cheerly from the river winding clearly down to town at Camelot. And by the moon the reaper weary, piling sheaves in uplands airy, listening whispers tease the fairy, the Lady of Shalott. There she weaves by night and day a magic web with colors gay. She has heard a whisper say, a curse is on her if she stay to look down to Camelot. She knows not what the curse may be, and so she weaves steadily. Little other care hath she, the Lady of Shalott. Moving through a mirror clear, there hangs before her all the year. Shadows of the world appear. There she sees the highway near, winding down to Camelot. And sometimes through the mirror brow, the knights come riding two and two. She hath no loyal knight and true, the Lady of Shalott. But in a web she still delights to weave the mirror's magic sights. For often through the silent nights, a funeral with blooms and with lights and music went to Camelot. When the moon was overhead, came two young lovers lately wed. I'm half sick of shadows, she said, the Lady of Shalott. Shot from her bower heaps, he rode between the barley sheaves. The sun came dazzling through the leaves and flamed upon the brazen greaves of bold St. Lancelot. A red-cross knight forever kneeled to a lady in his shield, sparkled on the yellow field beside remote Shalott. His broad clear brow in sunlight glowed, on burnished hooves his war-horse trode. From underneath his helmet flowed his coal-black curls as on he rode down to Camelot. And from the bank and from the river he flashed into